Greetings, all praising the King. Welcome to Eyewitness, an eye with an eye, an unscripted source where we reason to discover truth, supporting the struggle for international justice. Today's topic is on journalism. What is journalism and who is a journalist? We know this term journal to be writing. Anyone could have a journal. Sometimes it's referred to as a diary. It's just a log of daily events. It's really that simple, You could be a journalist in investigating nature, taking account of the activities of honeybees. You could be a journalist, interviewing people. You could go door to door and interview people. You could study the skies. Be a journalist on geoengineering. There's really not much of a limit of what you can do. Now, this is supposed to be something of a necessity in what they call the democracy. They say that that we should have a right. They say to free press. Yeah, press is just another term for what they call journalism. Now, I don't like to use the term journalism, so I refer to it as a journalist or reporting or something to this effect. The ism is a man-made construct, and it signifies these powers, earthly powers, given by man to man. When we talk about, journalism today, we often speak about institutional journalism. These are the folks that, as we discussed in previous video, may be considered professionals, usually depending on what institution they work for. For example, if they're a regular column writer for the Wall Street Journal, then they would be considered professionals. But if they work, as apprentice for a local newspaper, then they wouldn't really be considered professionals. So there is a degree of acceptance based on where a person derives their income from. Now, we spoke about the institutional model in our society, which governs people's minds to accept something is credible or trustworthy. We've talked about the disciples pointing to the temple and the Christ having shunned them. It's similar where people are in shock and awe. It's that feeling that there's something greater. There's something greater than you. It's the institution. And normally it goes like this. People know that there's many workers, employees for that institution. And so how should they, come up against all these people, right? If the institution just existed as one person, yeah, but they've registered it as a business, so that it's official, yeah. they still wouldn't be seen as trustworthy if it was just one person. And there's a reason for this. This is the institutional model. It gives credit to those who don't deserve credit. And it functions as a source of information. This is very critical to our subject, in that this is basically what it involves in. Journalism is a display of information. Sometimes information is either left out, let's say discredited, or contained within the report, say credited. This is all people see, is what they're shown. So the idea of this journalism is to show people certain information and leave out other pieces of information. This we've spoke about how similar this is to the what they call the legal court process, which frames people, and it frames them by showing certain information and leaving out other information. Even the information that's shown could be false, but nevertheless it's what people are told. These people that call themselves professional journalists, they walk a kind of line, teeter-tottering, so that as to appear to be truthful, and yet to only include certain information. If you take, for example, the latest thing, they started off telling us about all the people that have died from this thing, and they don't tell you much about the people, other than they give you some numbers. They don't tell you about any preconditions that those people may have that may have caused their death. They really just don't tell you about the process in general. And so it becomes a spectacle. Now, journalists know, about what others would like to see. People like to be praised. They like to think that the community that they live in is the best. They like to think that if they're doing well for themselves, they like to think that they deserve what they have. And they also like to think that there's people around them that don't. In other words, people like to feel superior. So we'll call that a spectacle of superiority. Similar to the congregations when people go into these so-called churches. The so-called preachers will tell them what they like to hear. That's how they're going to make their money. That's how they're going to get the funding. And so, people are not going to be willing to read from the report if it isn't interesting to them. If the journalists were really truthful and really willing to show people what people need to be seeing right now in this time, for example, with the destruction of the planet, if they really put that on, the platform that it should be, then it would be a turnoff. People would not be wanting to listen to it very long, because people are mostly concerned with their lives, their personal lives. And that means that, for example, they're just trying to get by. And so if you give them information that's not necessarily motivating, it tends to show them about these kind of ills of society that really disprove their motivation, or their willingness to be content. Then people will not be interested. So the idea is you got to keep people interested. Now, it doesn't mean you're always showing people everything that's good, because we know that's not what's happening, right? Most of what the so-called news focuses on are negative things. And so that's similar to like when people are driving down the road and you come up on a pileup of cars and there's an accident up ahead, because all the people that are driving will like to see, they got that rubber neck, and they like to see what's going on. And a lot of times people do this because it excites them a little bit to see the suffering of others. It's the world we're dealing with. When they see others suffer, they think that their life is better, knowing that their life is not all that. Yeah? But see, they're not willing to come to grips with this reality, because like I said, in doing so would make them feel that their little life is less interesting. Yeah, so again, they're providing that spectacle of superiority. People feel good about themselves. I mean, is that really what it takes to be a journalist? Just tell people what they want to hear. But it's a money-making racket. It's just another industry. And there's something behind it. When there's a newspaper, or there's a television program, a radio station, a magazine, there's actually somebody that owns that publication. They actually have a stake in what is being said. Yeah. So then you have your editors that will do just that. They will alter the writings of the journalists. These are the management. They're certainly considered the professionals of the organization. Yeah. So they extract the work and then they change it, yeah, to fit whatever that agenda may be. Provide only some information. And sometimes this information can come in the form of text, and sometimes it can come in the form of images. A lot of, in recent days, a lot of this information is in the form of images. Images are symbolic. It's something that people see, and they gather information based on what it is that they see. You consider that propaganda any which way, really, But the idea is to use the image to make the display, to feed people the thought that you would like them to think. So if there's someone that is hated by the world, they would not show a good picture of that person. I mean, this is real simple stuff. And people often overlook it because, again, it's what people see. And when people see things, they kind of like to take something out of it, whether it be a good laugh, or maybe it fits into what they was already assuming. Yeah? But there's an implicit bias, so that they're going to run with that and just say, hey, that's just the way it is. Even this picture shows it. This person's not right. Now we know that the photo ops often use the software to adjust those images. So, for example, if there's a group like the Taliban, for example, even if they take a picture of real members of the Taliban, they might darken around their eyes. Yeah. But what we're realizing lately is that they're actually using models. They're using substitutes, not actual Taliban members, but just folks they picked up off the streets. In some cases, these are hired models. It could be one of them. An insider. Either way, they put their parallel on them, and then they make them look like something from a Hollywood movie or something. And it provides for that image. Gives people an impression about this group, for example, the Taliban, based on one image. Now, the headline of an article, for example, it has immense weight because a lot of people just don't have the time. Sometimes they don't even have the ability to read these articles thoroughly and to really know what's being said. Even between the lines. So the images or the headlines provide for a quick, impression. People see it, they say, "Oh, that's what's happening." That's what the headline said. Again, this goes back to the institutional awe. People are going to believe, "Oh yeah, there must be truth to that," because otherwise it wouldn't be in that publication. It's similar to how, as we discussed, the so-called, the judicial industrial complex, so-called legal court system works. In that, if somebody was arrested, then something must have happened. This is what people think. And in most cases, this could be true. But see, they can tell you 99% true and 1% lies. It's probably more like a 90-10. So, for example, 90% people may have done something, but there's 10% of people that did not, that are being framed. There's 10% of articles that are not truthful for whatever reason. Maybe they're excluding certain pertinent pieces of information. Yeah, certainly. If you have a bear in the wilderness, and the article says, "Brown bear dies of illness," and you see the picture of the bear. Well, you think, well, the bear died because it got sick. But what they didn't tell you is that the water the bear was drinking from was polluted. It was polluted. They left that piece of information out. ExxonMobil dumped oil into the land, and the bear got sick from it. Again, your impression, what you gather from that is not accurate. Yeah, it's distorted. Because the bear got sick, but you just didn't realize why it got sick. You thought the bear got sick because it's time to go. But it wasn't its time to go. It got killed. So we can't really stress this enough about information, how information is included and how information is left out. When these people that call themselves journalists go out and gather information, sometimes they'll talk to other people. Well, we've witnessed firsthand, if you accept a conversation with these folks, that they will use your words and twist them. They will not use your words verbatim. Instead, they'll use your words in a way to fit into their story, whatever their story is. And every story they have has a theme. This is what the editor is going for. He would like for the readers to come out of that believing or thinking in a certain way. So they carry a particular theme. And this could be, again, it could be in a print, it could be, on the internet, it could be auditory, like on the radio. But they like for people to come out thinking something. Yeah. That's called the theme. Now, most of this, all that we've been discussing now, these journalists are working for an institution. Yeah. The people that are called journalists, that are considered to be journalists in our culture, actually work for someone. So I think that there was a person in Afghanistan that recently said this the best way, is that those journalists are not free. That there is no free press when you work for someone. As an employee, yeah, you have a direction. Normally by your editor or whoever that supervisor is in between you and them. And that's what you have to write about. If you steer away from that direction, you could lose your job. Yeah. So the idea that, we have a right to free press is backwards, because free press is being discredited. Anyone that's not actually an employee of one of these institutions is somehow, being viewed as not worth listening to. When if you think about it, let's say you're talking about firefighter. You got volunteer firefighters. Would anybody say, well, that person's a volunteer firefighter, so therefore they're really not a real firefighter? You have Doctors Without Borders, which is an organization that provides medical services for people across the planet, and does so in some cases voluntarily. So would you say, well, those aren't real doctors because they're not getting paid? This is backwards. Yeah. Would you say that Moses was really not worth listening to because he didn't get paid? He didn't work for one of these major institutions, the CIA or something to that effect. So therefore, forget about it, what he says. Would you say that? Yeah, so the opposite is true. Those that are not under the directive of another person or entity actually may have something worth listening to. They actually might. Yeah. For example, I'm sitting here right now talking about this. What am I expecting to gain from this? Yeah. Other than maybe some therapy. To get this off your chest. Because you don't hear enough people, you don't hear anyone talking about this kinds of stuff. You got some new programs that are coming out supposed to talk about journalism. They're always part of it. We've talked about the oppositional staging Again, it's a matter of information with these people. Check it. Think about what they're saying. Yeah. Who are they actually giving their power to? They're giving their power to the beast. Yeah. They usually keep referring to this thing they call the Constitution. Yeah. And in it, they say the bedrock of the democracy is this Bill of Rights. And in there is the numero uno rule of free press. Shall not be infringed upon. Or however it's worded, it's not anything central to just this region of the world. This is something that all the so-called democracies profess. Yeah, and some of them probably honor this. Some of them probably do. But in the USA, again, people don't consider the real free press to be even press. Now, if you were able to distribute material and get to more people, then maybe people would take you more seriously. But you'll get blocked. Just like if you start a website, you're going to have a distributed denial of service. They're going to flood that website with their information, right? Just trying to get, just logging in. And then it's going to block others from seeing what it is that you do. If you take, for example, in Afghanistan, the superpowers had lost the war. And so now the legitimate government of Afghanistan has regained its territory and began to put out their own form of press. Yeah. Meanwhile, the terrorist organizations are now involved in destroying that which was free by blowing up those buildings. You see, the irony is that we were told that the Taliban was a terrorist organization. Yeah. But then that lie wore thin, and now we're being told the Taliban is being terrorized. And we know who they're being terrorized from. We actually heard this morning about 1 million children that could be dying from hunger in Afghanistan right now, today. They say by the end of the year or in a year's time. They didn't tell us anything else. This is headline news. 1 million children will die from hunger. How come they didn't tell us about the children dying from hunger last year or the year before? How come it wasn't headline? Well, it's obvious, because the Taliban has regained the territory, so now they're looking to make the Taliban look bad. They're not taking care of their people. They can't really govern their people and this kind of thing. Meanwhile, yeah, they pulled out the international support, yeah, which was embodied into that false government they established. And so it really didn't have much of a purpose for the legitimate government of Afghanistan. Nevertheless, that became the reason, because a lot of people did rely on that gold that they had taken away. A lot of people that were in the cities have relied on that. So again, it's another piece of information. They give you one piece of information and they don't back it. They don't back it. They tell you about the thing. It's coming along. It's going to destroy people. It's going to take over the planet. We got to do this and that. They don't tell you where it comes from. Yeah. Again, they just give you a certain information. So who is it that's the journalist? Is it really the one that works for someone, or is it really the one that's not incentivized monetarily? Who is worth listening to? Is it somebody that knows how to write really well, spell really well, got the English language down? Yeah, that's what they'll make you think. Yeah, if you try to put out a publication and you misspell a word, boy, You must not be worth listening to. That's what the editor's job is to do. Make sure those words are spelled correctly. They want to appear as believable as possible. And there's some kind of a credit attributed to that when people are, when words are spelled right, really, So, and it's the format too. Of course, it's got to be that shock and awe. When you go to the website, it's a big website. It's a lot of different links here, right? There may be something flashing across the screen. It's all designed to make it seem more believable. If you go to the same website and there's just a bunch of text, no pictures, nothing flashy, no colors, a lot of people will say, well, this is not really worth listening to. Now, there's plenty of people that will say, this is interesting. This might be worth reading because they actually know a little bit more. But again, people are interested in being entertained. And this is really what the press goes for today, is that entertainment. They're not entertaining people, they're not keeping people engaged. Yeah. If they're not keeping people engaged, and they're not feeding people what it is they like for people to chew and swallow. So even if you turn on the television, you see the news broadcasters, they're out there talking about this and that. The idea is to make people entertained. You see a lot of them, they might not look very appealing to me and you, but to other people they actually are. They are because they look the same. If people look similar, they appear to be more trustworthy to those people. People seem to be more willing to listen to those that look alike than not. And that could be a natural attribution. People will see people that look similarly to them is more familiar, like family. Yeah. And of course, people are more willing to listen to their family than they are to listen to strangers. So a lot of these folks, even though they look like dorks, that's what the agency, uses, because they look like the audience. The people that are actually willing to listen to these folks are the ones that look like them. Yeah, you know how the women are used. Their bodies are used to sell the story. And so, even if somebody's not really that interested in what the story is, but they see the model that looks like them or something somewhat attractive, then some of what that person says will sink in. As long as they can get people to lend an ear, then they can usually sell their shit and convince people to buy it. So it's a lot about what we see, it's a lot about what we hear. It's a lot about how they display things. I got a plane or something over my head right now. So what I'm saying is not as appealing because the noise is annoying. You see, so if you're listening to somebody on the television, on the radio, they're not going to have a noise, a motor over their head. Yeah. So in that case, it's the technology. We talked about the distribution, the way they can get the message out, how they can get the message out. When I get up, I put my clothes on, I don't necessarily think about it as far as, how am I gonna show myself today? But they got unlimited threads, and they got makeup artists that do makeup on these people to make them look a certain way. They also use lighting and other kinds of mechanisms to make a person seem more credible. Yeah, it's the same person. You can take this person and you can put them in the same place, but with different lighting, a different set of clothes, and their message will come out differently. If it's not as entertaining, people will be less willing to listen to it, to be engaged. So the story won't sell. So in that case, it has to do with the display. Now we've talked about oppositional staging. We've talked about how they've used images. I'll give you one example. The so-called free press in the northern part of Florida that functions really as an agency for the university up there came to an event protesting against the pipeline, and their journalist got arrested. Yeah, she got the cuffs on her, but then the cuffs were taken off of her. We got it on camera. Basically, this is staged opposition. They're looking to make this person seem as if they're one of us. Yeah. And then the picture that these folks take of the event will show one of them. So they have inside it some plants. And so they would like their plants to be, get the credit for the event. Same thing they're doing today with the police brutality. They like for their group to get the credit for the resistance. So they take a picture of their people, doing this kind of thing, and then that goes down in history. Remember, these are historical accounts. This becomes history. What is written, whether it be newspaper, magazine, television, or on the radio. That becomes the historical count. Eventually, this becomes what they call facts. And if you go to like a Wikipedia or something, they'll tell you, oh, this article was written at this time. It really doesn't mean anything to the educated person. But to most people that have just been conditioned to believe what they see or what they're told, they assume that this is good information. Just because it points to a newspaper article or a book. Yeah. And people just assume that's correct. It's the institutional model again. Somebody was trying to convince me in jail one time that the Egyptian civilization was just. It was for our people. It was for us. Because he had read a book. One of probably the only somewhat interesting books he could obtain inside that place. He read it, and it told him, about the Egyptian civilization, how it was really for our people and whatever the author said. So when I was trying to tell him that the Egyptian civilization was really Babylonian, he disputed that because he had read a book. Yeah, people have. We've talked about the state. People have invested their time into something, and so they don't want to think that what they just did was a waste of time. They like to actually think that they got something out of it. They became superior for reading that. Yeah. Again, it's institutional because that book has been published. It's a book, and you think, well, because this book exists, it must be true. It must be true because it's a book, man. And most everything that's been written, most everything, at least in modern age, has been written at the behest of a superior. There's somebody giving them the direction, whether it be a professor, or it could be a columnist. But they're telling them, hey, we'd like for this book to be written. Sometimes the person's name's only used. They might have been a leader of some nation or something. So their name is going to be used for this book. It could be even what they call an autobiography. But nevertheless, it wasn't even written by that person. You see, it's just their name being used. So there's plenty of deception happening in this world of journalism. And those that are actually looking to counter this deception with the truth are suppressed. We're shut out. We're seen as phony. Not worth listening to. Not real journalists, because we're not being paid by the adversary.